So what's going on, everybody? I recently released a video where I ranked all of the films in the Conjuring universe. And one of the reasons why I did that is because I love James Wan. And I also just love ranking horror movie franchises. And so being on that James Wan kick and wanting to watch some more of James Wan's material, I decided I've never watched the entire Saw franchise. And when I was a kid and I was growing up, Saw was one of those franchises where growing up in a conservative household, everyone's like, oh, this is filthy, this is vulgar, this is disgusting. You don't need to watch these movies, they're just gore porn and blah, blah, blah. And so in my youth, I watched the first 3, maybe 4 films, not recollecting a whole lot about them. And kind of just pushing them out of the way and like looking at what I gave the first 4 films on Letterboxd, I was like, well, I clearly didn't care about these. And coming around and watching this whole franchise now, I absolutely adore this stupid, absolutely moronic franchise that doesn't take itself too seriously. And that's what I love so much about this is like, the internet seems to be really confused as to what Saw is. I've explained this to multiple people since I've watched these films this week, and that is, Saw is essentially a daytime soap opera with gore. The over-the-top dialogue, the really hammy performances, the absolutely insane editing choices that sometimes don't make any logical sense, and the plot twists in the third act that are just like, what in the fuck is going through these filmmakers' heads when they make these movies? And they're just fun. That's what these movies are. They're not incredible masterworks of American cinema. They're just a lot of dumb fun that I enjoyed the heck out of almost all of these movies. There's maybe one exception in the entire franchise to a film that I didn't really like. But for the most part, I would say all of these are super watchable and really entertaining if you don't take them too seriously. And that's the thing about this whole franchise is it clearly doesn't take itself too seriously. But what's really impressive is that if there's any loose ends left in a previous installment, they're typically tied up with a pretty bow in the next one. I'm gonna get into detail with a lot of these films. I'll probably give a little bit of spoilers. If you haven't watched these movies, they've been out for like a decade now, so get on with the times. But I'm going to be ranking all 9 Saw films, including the Jigsaw film and the Saw, the Book of Spiral that was released in 2019. I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. And my opinion, I almost guarantee, will be very different than your opinion. Because like I said, I don't see these as serious horror films. I see them as really goofy, hammy, over-the-top camp movies. And they're a lot of fun. And if you go in not taking them seriously and just appreciating them for what they are, you'll really enjoy them. I always say, this is my opinion. This is not fact. My list is probably going to be drastically different than yours, but this is the order in which I enjoyed them from the least to my very favorite. So without further ado, let's get into the list. So coming in dead last place is the most recent 2021 Saw, Spiral, Book of Saw, the Spiral movie, whatever it's called. Spiral from the Book of Saw. This was the film that people who are a fan of the franchise got really excited about because Chris Rock said that he absolutely loved this franchise and wanted to kind of bring some new life into it after all these years. And someone I'll talk about in great detail today, my favorite director in the Saw franchise, Darren Lynn Bousman, who crafted some of my favorite films in this entire franchise, came back to the helm to direct this project. So I was very optimistic about this, and this is the only film in the entire Saw franchise that I hated. I thought this movie did not understand the tone of the Saw films. It takes itself way too seriously. It comes across as hammy and not a really good way, and it's clearly Chris Rock being very self-indulgent. He wanted to put himself at the forefront of this. His acting in this is just god-awful and not even in a funny way. He's constantly trying to deliver these lines of comedy that are just horrible. And then you have the Jigsaw killer in this film who, like, oh my god, the vocal performance on the tapes that are being left, you don't have that iconic John Kramer voice that is in every single one of the other films. It's like, it almost feels like an elderly woman who's like being dubbed like an Alvin and the Chipmunks character. And you have Chris Rock's character as this divorced guy who's working at this precinct. He's like the cop that no one likes because he's trying to be the straight man and he wants to do things right. And his dad, played by Samuel L. Jackson, was the hotshot at the precinct. And the Jigsaw killer is apparently back. And they know it's not him because John Kramer's been dead for all these years. So they believe that it's a copycat and he's going after police officers. And so the film is the head of the precinct tells Chris Rock he has to start working with a partner. His partner is played by Max Minghella from The Handmaid's Tale, who I really like normally. And I think he's probably the standout performance in this film. But this movie just is really forgettable. It's not funny. It's really not scary at all. The traps are okay. I wasn't like super into it. And by unpopular opinion, the traps aren't what make these movies for me. It's the really campy dialogue and the ridiculous plot arcs that really make these movies enjoyable. And by the end of it, I just felt like every aspect of it was really forgettable. The third act twist is okay. It's not anything super special. And it's really disappointing because it really misses the tone and the mood of the remainder of these films. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about Spiral. It's not really that great. And it is the only film, I feel like, in the entire Saw franchise that I probably wouldn't revisit again. I like all 8 other films enough that I would go back and watch them again. So coming in at number 8, and this is probably going to be a very controversial opinion because I know a lot of people that like this franchise enjoy this one a lot, is Saw 6. So this film follows this insurance agent person who was interacting with John Kramer and who is essentially just a crooked person that works for an insurance company. And insurance companies, as we all know, are inherently evil. They do terrible things. And I loved the concept of these people in this insurance agency being tortured by Jigsaw. I thought it was hilarious. I thought that it was a really great concept and a great commentary about our society. But the problem with this movie is it's really fucking boring. And that's upsetting because the Saw franchise are such engaging and fun films. And this film follows Hoffman, who is one of the people who takes over Jigsaw's legacy, as we see in the 4th, 5th, I don't remember, one of those movies. And they all kind of blend together in this timeline. But Agent Strom, who was coming after him, has passed away, unfortunately, R.I.P. You have the cops kind of honing in onto Hoffman. And this film is Hoffman going after this insurance agent who has done some really terrible things in his life. And the traps in this can be really great. I really liked the trap that had all the people on like the merry-go-round-esque type thing from a children's playground with a shotgun attached to it. And there's some unique traps in this film, but I think, you know, these movies end up being about an hour and a half runtime, and most of it is following Hoffman in a way that I just found really kind of boring. And where all the other films really pull my attention and keep me super engaged, this movie kept pulling me out, which, like I said, with this concept about the insurance agents, I just really loved that whole idea. And I thought that it would be a lot of fun, and I was super excited to watch this one. And it just kind of fell flat for me, and that's disappointing because I really love this franchise. And that's not to say this movie is unwatchable. There are definitely some really good moments in this, and it's definitely worth watching to get you through this franchise. But that is why it's coming in at 8th place for me on this list. Coming in at number 7 is the 2017 film Jigsaw. This was actually a surprise. So this was the first film after the original 7 installments, and I was super interested to see what kind of direction they took. And this movie was back on that silly shit. It has some really funny moments. There's some really cringeworthy dialogue in this, but aside from that, there's some really interesting character stuff in this movie that I really appreciated. And I felt like the backstory of each one of these people who had been kidnapped was really great. I thought the third act twist in this was actually really back to original form for the Saw franchise, and like the goofy nature of like, oh my god, why is this person actually doing this? I really liked this barn setting that they were in, and I thought that first trap where they woke up with the buckets on their head with the saws in front of them that they had to give up a little bit of blood for the machine to stop was a really great trap. And there's also that really unique trap in it with the kid with the motorcycle where he's being put into that little saw machine where he does not try very hard, which becomes a pretty reoccurring theme throughout these films. Of sometimes I'm like, man, for them telling you that you're gonna survive if you actually try, and you might hurt yourself a little bit, but you got to give it a shot. Some of these people just do not try whatsoever, and this film has a couple moments where you're like, these people aren't really trying. I did really like the mystery of this film. I thought all the new characters that were introduced were interesting enough. There's just a lot of dead moments in this film, which is why it falls a little lower on my list. I still think it's a lot of fun. I think it's really enjoyable, but it's definitely not as strong as some of the other films in this franchise. I thought the cinematography was a little cleaner than the original franchise, which actually kind of takes away from it a little bit for me. I like the dingy, gross, kind of like sepia tones of the other films that just look kind of nasty and just really awkward. I did enjoy this film though. I love the incorporation of the John Kramer voice still in this film, even though he's been dead for an eternity. And the plot twist in this is absolutely ridiculous, and you'll never see it coming. And that's what I love about these movies, and what I'll talk about in all the other films in this franchise. The stupid plot twists are what make it so much fun for me, and this movie has a really dumb plot twist. Coming in at number 6 is Saw 5. This is the Hoffman-Strom mano-a-mano back and forth fight that occurs where Strom is on to Hoffman. He thinks that Hoffman is the Jigsaw killer, and it's his quest to find him and to track him down. And I really liked that element of this film. There's a couple of moments that it's not as engaging, but I feel like the back and forth between the two of them, Strom figuring out about Hoffman and kind of trying to pull apart this information, and then him being at it with the force and then being like, you're too close to this case, and those like really over the top campy ways that these movies kind of deliver that, where it's like, you're getting too close to this, you need to back off, this is a little too much. And I don't know, I just absolutely loved that about this movie. Scott Patterson from Gilmore Girls, who plays Agent Strom, is fantastic. He is probably one of my favorite parts in this film, and I do like the incorporation of Jigsaw's wife's plotline in this movie. The reason why it falls lower on this list is, like I said with the last movie, it just has a couple of moments that are a little too bloated, and whereas the other movies are really in your face and non-stop, this one is just kind of short in the way that it delivers. The traps in this are really great. I do love the one that Strom gets caught in with the like cube over his head, and that he has to like find a way to continue to breathe. There's a lot of really good moments like that in this movie that I really enjoyed, but that is why it falls in number 6 on my list. Coming in at number 5, and this is probably going to be my most controversial opinion of the entire episode. There's a lot of Saw fans who will probably be like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. What are you putting this here for? But coming in at number 5 is James Wan's Saw, the original film that started the franchise. I have seen this movie, I think now 5 times. This was like my 5th time watching it. And what I will say is it's really enjoyable. It's a great start to the franchise, but it's nothing on par to what the sequels will do to it. It takes itself a little too seriously. It's a little bit too bloated. I think the performances are hammy in a way that doesn't always work. Cary Elwes is fantastic. He's probably my favorite part of the entire movie. He really just kind of keeps you super engaged. Obviously, Tobin Bell's performance as Jigsaw in this film is not as prevalent because we still don't know that it's him. We're still trying to figure it out. But that iconic voice and just kind of getting you into this world is really great. Leigh Whannell's performance is really bad, and not even in a fun way. It's just like I love Leigh Whannell. I think he's a great guy. He's a really talented screenwriter, but his performance in this is almost laughable. And I don't know, I found myself falling out of this one quite a bit, and I'd seen it a few times, so I already knew what the twist was going to be. But this is a film that feels really dated in a way that the datedness of the other ones feels kind of charming. This one being as dated as it is, I don't know. There was something about it, I didn't enjoy it as much. I still found some of the moments a little suspenseful, but by the end of it, I was like, the sequels did it better. And I know that's something a lot of people probably don't want to hear, but the sequels in this franchise are much more enjoyable than the original film, which, like a couple other series that I will talk about on this channel eventually, the first film isn't always the best, and so that's why it is at number 5 on my list. Coming in at number 4, another controversial opinion. One of the most fun and dumbest movies that I have ever seen in my entire life. Saw 7, the final chapter. This movie is beyond stupid, but it understands the tonality of the sequels I'm going to talk about that are higher on this list, which is it doesn't take itself too seriously. The traps in it are super fun. The twist is like so over the top dumb that you would never even see it coming. It's ridiculous, it's fun, it's stupid, and it is Saw. It is exactly what I want in these movies. This one follows a self-help guru who has survived a jigsaw trap, and he is trying to provide comfort and support to other people who have survived the Saw traps. And this movie is ridiculously dumb. You find out that he has lied and that he hasn't actually survived a Saw trap, and so he's kidnapped and put into this situation. And it is wonderful. The traps in this movie are insane. There's this one where he has to like guide his friend through these like support beams. And it's just like so over the top, and he's having to choose who's gonna die in these certain circumstances. And I really like that character, but the best part of this movie is the detective who is introduced in this film. Holy shit, he gives the hammiest, most over-the-top, awful performance that had me on the floor laughing because he's so committed to the schlock. And that's what I love about this whole franchise. It's schlock, it's stupid, it's not meant to be taken seriously. These aren't gritty crime dramas. They feel very like CBS, ABC, soap opera level dialogue throughout this whole franchise, and this one camps it up to the most intense. And what I love is this movie starts off with that trap that's like outside that people are seeing happen on the street, and so you feel like it's gonna have a very different nature tonally when it starts, but then it drops you right back in to what these movies have always been, and that is dumb, campy fun. And I fucking love this movie. Of like, compared to all the ones before this that I've already listed, this is one I would go back and just watch because it is that dumb and fun, and I enjoyed every second of this. The reason why it falls lower on the list than my next 3 films is because the other 3 are better, and they're more fun, and they're tonally similar, and I enjoyed them more than this one, but you should still watch Saw 7 because it is a blast. Coming in at number 3 is the last film in the Darren Lynn Bousman trilogy, my favorite Saw filmmaker, Saw 4. I love the way Darren Lynn Bousman makes these movies. They are the top tier, the cream of the crop of the Saw franchise. They are stupid, they are fast-paced edited, they are goofy as hell, and they are some of my favorite horror films I've watched in an immense amount of time. So this film is John Kramer is dead. As we see at the beginning of the film, there's an autopsy being performed on him. You're jumped into Detective Rigg, who I believe was in the last film, who he's trying to figure out because all these other people around him have died, and it's driving him insane. And so he's trying to figure out who is killing people now, because Jigsaw is technically dead. Who is going to be killing these people? And this film brings back these characters that you love. This film brings back Donnie Wahlberg as Eric Matthews, who is like, when he popped up, I was like, holy shit, he's back! And you have all these characters in this film that you remember and that you love, and Rigg is being sent on this journey. He's got this complicated relationship with his wife because you got to have that battered police officer who's going through all this shit. And this movie takes the camp up to level like 100 in the best way possible. And what I love about this is the third act of this movie. The traps in this movie are pretty good. They're not the best in the franchise, but they're all right. But what's great about this movie is the third act blow up, which is the first time that you're getting like these other movies. You're getting timeline messed up where you don't even really know where you are in the current period of time. You get like twist after twist after twist where you're like, my brain can't process all these twists. It's just like, this person's dead, but this person's alive, but this person's dead. And it's just like so in your face and intense. And I loved that about this movie. It's so much fun. But the thing is, the other two films that are higher on this list are more fun, more engaging. And like I said, I'm trying not to spoil too much about these movies because they're so much fun to watch. And I want people who haven't seen them to just go into it. But that's why Saw 4 is number 3 on my list. Coming in at number 2 is Saw 3, another Darren Lynn Bousman joint. This one I love. I think it is so immersive and engaging. You have Amanda, who is like the big Saw character from the original three films, who we find out is working with Jigsaw. And Jigsaw's health is starting to deteriorate. He's starting to get really sick. And so they kidnap this doctor who is going to help keep Jigsaw alive while this group of traps is going on. And the only rule is that she has to keep him alive through these people this specific person getting through these traps. And the person who we follow in this film is this man who has lost his child to a driver who wasn't paying any attention, and he hit his kid and he just drove off. And so we're following him, and he's coming into contact with all of the people who were involved in his son's case. And it's super interesting the way that it's written, because I felt like that plot arc was really interesting and really well written, and I liked that part of it. But what really sets these movies, the Darren Lynn Bousman films, above all the other ones, is the third act twists in this movie are like so unbelievably unpredictable. I could have never guessed what the fuck was going to happen at the end of this movie, and when it happened, I was like, this is the shit that I live for. It is so over the top and ridiculous. The traps in this film are really great. There's this one in particular where the judge who got the guy off that murdered his kid on just like a 6-month sentence is like trapped in this thing where these pigs are like shot into this machine and ground up, and he starts like drowning in like ground up pig, and it is like so vile and disgusting. The trap that the person who killed his son is in is like brutal, like twisting all of his like tendons and stuff. And I know I haven't talked much about the traps in these because I think it's fun to just go into these movies and not know a whole lot about them, but the traps in this one are really great. They're really intense and in your face. Like I said, the third act twist in this is great. I feel like this movie and my number 1 spot could change. I hadn't seen these in a long time, so they could change again, but this movie and my number 1 pick are flawless in the Saw franchise, and I loved this movie a lot. Coming in at number 1 is the first film in the Darren Lynn Bousman trilogy, Saw 2. This movie fucking rocks. Eric Matthews, one of my favorite over-the-top ridiculous Saw characters, the tortured cop with the horrible relationship with his son, who his son gets kidnapped and put into the Saw trap. This whole idea of putting these people in this house, having this poison go into the house and saying you have this specific amount of time until the poison takes over your body and starts making you sick is such a cool concept. And then having all these other traps intertwined with the main thing of like, this poison is going to kill you, and watching them kind of eat at each other. The people in the group who aren't willing to follow the rules and who are knocked out of the way pretty early on. I love some of the traps in this. The oven trap is iconic. The one where Amanda has to go in and fish through all of the needles is really incredible. There's so many great traps in this film, but this is what made me love Darren Lynn Bousman's directing style and the way that these films are written. Is the third act twist in this. I was like, nah way, man. Like, this shit is just absolutely unbelievable. And I really liked Eric Matthews' character. I thought that it was great. This was one of the first like timeline fuck up movies, which I thought was fantastic. I love when it plays with time and kind of just fucks with your head as an audience member. And this movie is fun. The dialogue is hammy and campy like all the other films in this franchise. And it's just so enjoyable. And I could talk about this movie for an eternity, but this film is more just to kind of let you guys know which one of these in the franchise I think are worth watching. And Saw 2 is 100% worth your time. It is my favorite one in the franchise. You should 100% Watch 2 and 3. They are two of the best films, and that is my ranking of the entire Saw franchise. These movies are absurd, they're over the top, they're ridiculous, and they're fun, and I would 100% recommend you check these movies out because they were way better than I would have ever expected them to be. So how did my Saw ranking rank up against yours? Did you think I was nuts? I'm sure you did. Saw 7 was pretty high up on my list. I know a lot of people hate that movie. I loved the glorious schlock elements of it. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. As always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.